Hey everybody, ronarray here, and as 3.29 progresses, there's a pretty big question what to farm, especially what to farm early on if you don't want to invest too much into particular scarabs, since some setups can cost tremendous amount like multiple divines for one go. So in this video, I wanted to showcase the early farm that I've been doing every league for about 4 leagues in a row, which worked absolutely amazing for me and helped me out to get most of my currency early on. Feel free to subscribe to the channel if you appreciate such farm videos, and let's go so I will be able to explain how it works and how you can farm it too. So now let's talk about the strategy. And for the strategy, we're going to farm stack decks with divination scarabs of the cloister and nothing else. That strategy is very straightforward and you might seen it in the previous leagues. However, there are a few tricks how to make it work. And when prices for scarabs are going up, a lot of people would also consider it not profitable. However, even with the current prices, the strategy is still providing decent amount of currency, especially if you can run your maps fast. You can still get from 40 to 70 stack decks in a map. And considering the prices for stack decks will also go up, I believe that Divination Scarab of the Cloister is still in a good place, especially if the prices for Scarab itself will fall a little in the next few days. So now let's discuss what we will need to farm it. And first off, you're going to just use 5 scarabs, like divination scarabs of the cloister. Not a single other scarab is required right here. However, keep in mind that those scarabs are buffing each other. So perfectly, you need to have 5 sockets. So you need to defeat the nightmare boss, so perfectly like Ziggurat or Fortress or any other boss to get the last socket to farm that strategy. I believe that with the current prices, when Divination Scarab of the Cloister is about like 8 to 10 chaoses each, just running that strategy with 4 scarabs is not worth it. Instead, it always should be 5 and make sure that you have that socket. So after that, the main goal right here is to maximize amount of monsters we are getting in the map. And for that, we're going to try and get maximum amount of pack size. So first off, there's an option to run it on a budget. And when you're running it on a budget, you're only focusing on getting like proper basic maps. For that, I will recommend to get the maps with about 33% or pack size, so like from 30 and up. Getting those maps is pretty easy. You can just use a basic Regex and get some particular maps in there. Let me showcase how the coloring process is done. So right here, you have the basic maps, or you can use your map stash tab if you have one. And after that, you can just color your maps and use a basic Regex. Regex for 27% of pack size. Why 27? 27 Regex will allow us to just use a few exalteds on the maps to make them better. So right here, I'm using the basic Regex for 27 pack size. I'm going to leave the basic Regex in the pinned comment, so check it out, it might be helpful, but make sure you're looking at the modifiers and you're not breaking your build. So right here, you just recolor set off of the maps, and to get that, you will definitely need to color more. So right here, I got one, and right here, I got the second. If you have an open modifier at 27, you can click it with Exalted Orbs. If you don't, it is just good to go as is. Coloring the maps for it is a pretty important part. So right here I have 29 for example, and with 29 I will be able to click it and get 33 after one Exalted Orb. So the absolute minimum you can get at your map is a pack size around 33-35%. That's usually what you will need to get as many stack decks as possible. Another option is also just to buy originators maps. That way you can get a pretty high pack size without rolling much. So you can get 57, like 50 plus pack size for about 10 chaoses at the moment, but they quickly go higher in price up to 15 and so on and so on and so on. Usually, if you're running the originator map, I would recommend to go for higher pack size, and I probably would not overpay for it because it can literally sit on your profit significantly. So make sure that if you're doing originator maps, you're paying not much money for it and you're staying with like significantly lower number. Perfectly, I would recommend about 20 chaoses per map as an absolute maximum. And if you can get some for 10, that's definitely a steal, and I'm buying that one. Also make sure that you're not losing the modifiers. So talking about the rest of the setups. First off, at the moment I don't really recommend to use the Astrolabe. I believe that it could be a little too expensive and a big gamble in terms of profit. Since you're going to profit from the stack decks and bubblegum in the map itself, I believe that avoiding the Astrolabe and just running one of the maps that you like, for example like Jungle Valley or Mesa right here or City Square, anything like that is going to work absolutely fine. So in terms of the Atlas, it's also very simple. First off, we will need to get the Ritual chance up. Ritual is resurrecting the monsters that are dropping stack decks. So if they will spawn in the Ritual circle, they will just die in there and they might drop stack decks to you again. That process is pretty RNG based, however, in my opinion, as Ritual is definitely worth it. Ritual is also going to provide additional profit for you. Sometimes it's even going to drop something nice, which is like divines or additional currency, but I believe that having it there is definitely worth it, especially if you're going to take like all additional passives here, here, and here. So take everything ritual related except Sacrificial Dew, because I don't really believe like aiming for Blood-filled Vessel is worth it right here. But if you have more points than me, as you can see I'm only like 126, you can also invest into Sacrificial Dew as well. So accept the ritual. We're also going to take all possible things for pack size, so right here, all map modifiers bonuses here too. I recommend to spend at least 1 point for memory tier chance. And another part of the profit is using the Ether as an influence. We're going to buff the maximum amount of pack size for our Ether monsters, and Ether is going to drop additional currency, divination cards like Eldritch currency and stuff like that. That's a pretty decent part of the profit. And using the Ether altars, since you're already clearing all map, is definitely recommended, so don't miss your Ether stuff. So the rest of the Atlas is pretty straightforward too. We're just taking some Scarab chances right here, and I also recommend to use the shrines. So taking the shrine bonus supplication, taking all bonuses here and all bonuses here. Shrines are going to speed up your maps, so you will be able to run faster, you will be able to clear better, and it's also going to help you out if your build currently is not strong enough. So getting the shrines is definitely recommended, and I believe it's worth the points almost always. You can also spend a little additional points to just block mechanics, but it's not really means a lot here and mostly done for Scarabs. The rest of the Atlas stays the same. Ritual sometimes can provide a pretty decent amount of things too, so right here I have a Divine for example. It's not going to happen often, but that's a pretty nice bonus to the strategy. I'm not going to calculate that to profitability, however it's definitely stayed there and can provide a little upside on average. Important part right here is to keep in mind that amount of decks you're going to drop is going to be pretty RNG based. Sometimes it's going to drop more, sometimes it's going to drop less. But on average, you should be around 50 decks in the map. Let me showcase you one of the maps that I've done while testing the farm for that video. So here is a breakdown of a typical loot from one map. I have about 55 stack decks in there, which is a number on the upper side. As I already mentioned, on usual you will receive something in between like 45 up to 70 stack decks, which is practically RNG. You're going to profit every map with it, but usually I would expect about 50 decks on average, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. So 55 right here is working perfectly for me as an average example. So on top of it, I also dropped like a Scarab of Inscription, which is about 4 chaoses at the moment, Orb of Annulment, which is 10 chaoses at the moment, and a little part of other bubblegum too, so like such thing as bribing. Usually with the bubblegum, so just random drops and loot from your ritual, you should get from 10 to 20 chaoses averagely, and the rest is just going to come from stack decks. With the current prices, 55 stack decks are going to be about 90 chaoses, which is absolutely great. So 90 chaoses are coming from it. I also have one Orb of Annulment for, let's say, 9. And Inscription, as I already mentioned, for 4 chaoses. Right here, I still have Bribing for 3 chaoses as well. So I ended up with 109 chaoses, which is not that bad. Considering I paid about 9 chaoses for each Scarab, that would be 45. So that I spent for Scarabs. And this is a total profit. That's about 64 chaoses per map. That way, with the current divine prices, about 120 chaoses, you will get 1 divine every 2 maps on average in profits, which is definitely great at the moment. Especially considering the strategy is very easy to run, you don't need anything to set it up properly, and stack decks are always going to be heavily in demand. So that's pretty much it. I'm absolutely sure that Cloister's stack deck farming strategy is going to fluctuate in terms of how profitable it is, depending on the Scarab and on the stack deck prices. However, it's always going to be a solid choice if you're unsure what to farm, especially when other strategies are not providing that much currency. Thank you very much for watching, and hope you will be able to drop something nice as well. See you next time, and ronarray out.